makes sense. Good to have you back. How you doing?
Always good to be with you, Neil. And I think there are a couple of quotes that I'd like to, it's short quotes I can read to you that sums up this Universal Displaced Workers Program. The American Republic will endure until the day Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money. A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by a dictatorship. And that's the exact road that we're on right here, because all President Obama is doing, instead of coming up with a viable solution for job creation in the United States, he's just seeking to bribe the American public.
It does seem to be, whether you look at it as a bribe in so many ways or just postponing the agony, it does seem to be a lot of effort to retrain, retool, what have you, you know, sort of push people into the workforce without just maybe saving a lot of money by providing the environment that would get you into the workforce. There are serious concerns that just isn't happening at the pace it should, that the job gains certainly have been encouraging but not enough to get us back there. So you could cynically ask a question whether we need this at all. Do you let the private market now continue its own ongoing improving trend? In other words, to take the president's you know, accolades at face value, that let it continue.
Well, I think that good leadership takes responsibility and not credit. So we have to look at the right type of tax and regulatory policies that can spur on greater private sector growth. If you look at last year in fiscal year 2011, you saw a 0.4%, a 1.0%, 1.3%, and I believe about a 3% GDP growth in those 4 quarters. You know, when you go back and you look at where Ronald Reagan had us at the same time coming out of recession, we were at about 6 to 7% of GDP growth. And so we have to look at those pro-growth policies. We have to look at how we reform our tax code. You know, there are trillions of dollars of capital that's sitting on the sidelines that if the president would just allow that to be repatriated back to the United States of America, we could get production and manufacturing going again. If we look at reforming our personal income tax code, which is what our small business owners use, and how we can spur on capital formation for them to use to grow their businesses and expand and hire more Americans, we'd be in the right track. But instead, we have a health care law which is crushing the American people and small business owners, and we have Dodd-Frank, which is absolutely crushing, especially our small community banks, many of them driving them out of business, like I talked to some bankers.
You mentioned banks. They were all surging today. They're optimistic that when we get this so-called stress test report, that they're all doing peachy and ducky, who knows. But there is this feeling here with the run-up of the Dow today, the NASDAQ 11-year highs, you know, the old saw, Congressman, you and I have gotten into this, that the markets are a predictor or ahead of this curve, and seeing that improvement, much to disagree with what you were just saying. What do you think of that, that the markets say you're wrong, that the pickup is alive and well?
Well, I would think maybe the markets are looking 5 to 6 months down the road when we have a change in leadership in this country. I think
wait a minute, you think that this is built on a Republican either capturing the Republicans, capturing the Senate?
It depends on how far. It depends on how far the futures are looking down the road. I think one of the great things having the House taken back by the GOP was we did slow down this change. Think about if cap and trade had gone through the legislative process and what will be happening in the energy sector. Think about if a card check had gone through and what will be happening in the labor sector.
No, that's interesting. I don't want to jump on that, but I heard a couple posit that today that you know, maybe this is reflective of polls that show the president under more duress here, that it's not such a shoo-in for re-election. That might or might not be a stretch, but it is out there as a factor. You think that's a genuine factor? You think that the markets are getting bubbly in anticipation of a Republican taking the White House?
Well, I think that there is a new kind of hope that might be out there, is that we can get a person that has practical, viable solutions for job creation here in the United States of America, which does not involve an expansion and invasive growth of the federal government, but instead with the right type of policies that we can spur on job creation from the private sector as opposed to growing the public sector. And I think that's the most important thing that we have to have happen. And I'm still very concerned about the monetary policy that we see coming out of the Fed. As long as you see those interest rates being kept artificially low down at zero, we're printing more money. Our debt is still continuing to grow. You know, $4 billion a day is what we're spending spending, and our $1.3 trillion deficit, which is also forecast for this year. So we've got to have a change in the policies.
And by the way, Congressman, you alluded to the Federal Reserve. I'm sorry, sir, but the Federal Reserve did put out a statement today, kept rates where they were, said policy isn't changing anytime soon. Right, interest rates stay as low as they are. Some say that's the next big bubble, that these rates are weirdly low, and that in the face of the rising gas and food prices, that they're riskily low, if such a word. Well, what do you make of that? Do you think that's true?
I think you're absolutely right, because, as I said, it lends itself to almost an artificial economy. So, you know, Ben Bernanke is doing everything he possibly can to try to manipulate this situation, but it's not working. I think we're going on quantitative easing part 3. 1 and 2 did not work. We know that Japan tried stimulus packages and things of that nature from the government side, and that does not work. We got to get back to the basics, which is the right type of tax and regulatory policies, fiscal and monetary policies that provide that encouragement and incentive to entrepreneurs to turn this economy around and grow these jobs.